All right, hi. Thanks for having me. It's so wonderful to be here and back to my AOD roots. My very first job in psychology was at Odyssey House in Campbelltown, and then I went on to HIV in Darlinghurst and stepping up in Melton. I'm originally from Melbourne, so I came home. And yes, I find myself now in research for psychedelic medicine. I'm really delighted to be here to be amongst you all, and I want to acknowledge how much hard work this particular field can be. I've been fortunate to work in a few fields as a health psychologist in hospital settings and so forth, and I really keep coming back to the type of people that want to work in such a challenging, underfunded and yet incredibly heartfelt, rewarding sector. Many of you actually are the original psychedelic therapists or guides without knowing or otherwise, and many of you will be ideal in the hopefully burgeoning field that might be coming to offer a new way of looking at suffering and also substance use. So today I'm just going to, that's the right way, I'm just going to hopefully cover three sort of themes. I want to start with relationships, nourishment, hippie term, and trauma. I don't think any studies on humanity should not involve looking at those crucial foundations, and it was lovely to see you guys up there talking about that with the peer-led services. I also want to talk just briefly about the somatic and nervous system regulation system that we all have with us at any time, and we also connect to in other people. And these foundations, if they're there, I think will help inform what will be more, I don't want to say successful, more humanitarian and effective-based psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. And that's the final point that I'll be ending on with some pitfalls and the promises that it's being made. And if we don't have enough time for questions, I'm really happy to hang around and talk about this to the nth hour. Just some quick terminology. PAP or PAT I might use interchangeably, which is the Psychedelic-Assisted Psychotherapy acronym, obviously. By the way, psilocybin or psilocybin is still accepted very much amongst a lot of the psychiatric and the psychiatry doctors. Underground and above ground is the other term that you may use. You guys probably are aware of that, but just so you know, the above ground setting would be the legalised use and the underground setting would be the illegal use, which I want to mark, to say they are the original psychedelic guides. I also want to acknowledge the traditional owners of country in which we live and work, and I also want to acknowledge the rising awareness of neurodivergence that we're also learning about through the psychedelic space, perhaps because of the very complex neurological system that we're learning about. It's really exciting that people that already have, say, for example, synesthesia, in that they can hear colours or they can see music. You know, these are some of the psychedelic effects you'd be aware of that some people don't need substances to have. And so why aren't we paying more attention and tapping into this incredible wealth of the complex nervous systems that we have? You know, in latest statistics, it could be even as much as 1 in 4 children will be neurodiverse diagnosed in coming years. Sorry, navigating to. I won't stay on this one too long, but I just think it's always so important to acknowledge the privilege I'm in by being highly educated, and this wheel of privilege would be well familiar to many of you. I bring it up here now because a lot of the trial participants actually are being chosen through a system of privilege, and of course there's psychedelic therapist guides themselves. the people we really need in the room are a diverse, broad range of bodies, backgrounds and cultures. And as you be aware, in academia, particularly in Australia, it's a lot of the middle to the centre of the privileged circle that actually get the education or can afford to be in the room and learn and train as a psychedelic guide, because these training courses are thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. Little meme to example where we possibly stand with our ivory towers of psychology, and how the Indigenous systems that have been using these medicines for centuries are hopefully making their way in terms of being understood and respected in our more paternalistic and capitalist structures. Internal family systems is just one of the many depth psychotherapies that are available, and a lot of people love it because it's so familiar to us. There are terms such as, one part of me does this, another part of me does that, and yet if we look back at shamanism, the shaman themselves used to study for 20 years, 10 years minimum, 40 years in other tribes, alone in a cave, and learn to take the medicines to take on the different inflictions that their tribes people had. So they were the original parts workers, and I think it's important that we give that credit. As the Indigenous cultures also miss out on a lot of credit regarding what is the right relationship with these medicines, because we could really stuff this up again if we go in using the medicines in a way that we've already got with this top-down colonialised system. Whereas sitting with the medicine or using the medicines in a way that promotes this right relationship with country, with earth, with themselves, with others. It's not just seeing the medicine as another pill to swallow that will be the magical cure. In the work itself, I see when people have done a good amount of integration of these psychedelic experiences, you start to see this natural opening towards reciprocity. They want to start thinking about systems bigger than themselves. And if that's not there, we're still sometimes stuck more on that individualised, I'm the problem, I'm stuck, it was all my fault. Next year, another great speaker would be the IPAC group. Gemstone, a local mob woman, runs that, and it's an Indigenous Psychedelic-Assisted group specifically for understanding this reciprocity. Great website too, and training courses. Oh, where's my slide gone? Oops, sorry. This African proverb says it all. If the young are not initiated into the tribe, they will burn down the village just to feel its warmth. And this is where I hark back to this importance of relationship with the medicine and with the community around you. Because we know people have been using these medicines since the 60s, hey, MDMA from the 80s. If it was going to be the medicine on its own, it would all be living in a quite different culture right now. So I really implore us to start thinking about what are we doing in these spaces to offer support to others? What are we holding? And what kind of safety is coming into the room and our communities? So as our understanding of human trauma develops, as the neuroscience is getting better and better, we've got to start looking to the body, because this top-down, intellect-only talk therapy, as you know, only goes so far, because only half the brain really is being enacted. I won't drill on these ones, but I just want to put a tiny bit in there about the fact that the nervous system is a highly integrated and highly connected system where we need to consider others. We need to understand what a socially and environmentally and warm environment we're being in that would help sorry, I can just get my drink. That will help to explain why people are turning to substances in the first place. If there's that nourishment that all social mammals need, all creatures need, if that nourishment's not there from either the system they're in or they can't let it in, then we're going to start looking outwards. So these are just some of my assumptions on that, and including, talking about the attachment system, which I really hope everyone, if you haven't heard before, recommend you have a read about to understand the power of relationships from that early age. So David Nutt, one of the big leaders in psychedelics in the UK, he talked about the Lancet in this. In the Lancet, he talked about this as a really helpful harm reduction. Oops, sorry, wrong slide for you. I'm going too fast. There we go. You can see alcohol, as we've already talked about today, but right down to mushrooms, ecstasy, LSD on this side. The psychedelic substances actually have far less greater community impact than some of the ones that are actually legalised that you can get from 10 to 10, and as we've talked about earlier. So this, published in 2010, started to clue the field to the fact that we've got these substances that people are taking to have different experiences, even if they weren't initially, say for example, psychedelics like ketamine. There is that mind-opening impact that psychedelics offer. The main ones that are under exploration in Australia at the moment are psilocybin and MDMA, hence the underline, but LSD, 5-MeO and ibogaine, ayahuasca and mescaline are all having small studies around the world. There's hundreds actually happening all around the world for all different types of conditions, into mental health and pain, eating disorders, IV, but at the moment this is the predominant ones, and you'll see that some of the substances seem to have better effect in alcohol. Some are looking at more on the stimulant side, and certainly some on the smoking cessation. The exciting research that I wanted to share today, if you're going to remember anything, would be from Gil Dolan, and she's a neuroscientist over in, I think she's in the US. She famously gave MDMA to octopuses, so check out that research. I'd love to do a whole a chat about that. But what she found, and this is crucial I guess in the AOD field, is that psilocybin, LSD, MDMA, ibogaine, even ketamine, all demonstrated what we call this critical reopening of the social periods. So in her rats, our closest research relatives, she was able to demonstrate that those substances allowed this relational bonding period to reopen. So, we were talking about earlier about isolation, being alone, what it's like to then not feel nourished as a social mammal, which remember, that's what we all are. How amazing it was that she found that these substances opened these period of, and I'm going to show you for how long in a minute, but interestingly, cocaine did not. And it's different being with people on cocaine to these other substances, is it not? This was published in Nature too, which is one of the best, and same with the Lancet. Like, we're getting some really hard to get journals interested now. This is my favourite slide to show, as you can see on the, that's not your favourite slide. This is here on the left-hand side. The ibogaine is the longest. It's a plant medicine often used in addiction. It has, I had an asterisk up there because it has such a period of effect that there can be some serious, a little bit more challenging issues to navigate around withdrawal, and also if people were to reuse in that period. So that one we're not seeing a lot of in Australia, but LSD, MDMA, psilocybin, as I said. Some are microdosing studies, but most of them are macro studies. Again, I want to say it seems like it's a bit of a colonialised view to go that big and hard. I'll be curious to see over the next sort of decade if we start using microdoses and smaller amounts in that less, like, we've got to smash it all. As we get more intelligent and more softer in our empathy, I would be curious to see if the microdosing starts to catch up. At the moment, it's still only looking like it's sort of equivalent to placebo, but I'm not sure we're fully capturing it yet because we just don't have enough microdose studies happening. On the this side, you can see the critical period for social learning is actually really exciting, with ketamine, believe it or not, at 48 hours, psilocybin up to 2 weeks, MDMA 2 weeks, LSD 3 weeks, and again, Ibogaine, I was saying the longer period at 4. So this is a period where we can get in there and actually do some therapy in a different way. You know, there's an openness, there's a sparkle, and that might also not be that easy. There might be a terror. There might have been something really difficult surface, and this is where we talk about what is a bad trip. And a bad trip, in my definition, is an unsupported trip. Bad trips can be the most life-changing. Sure, they're not fun, they'll be terrifying, but if you're not alone with them, Johann Hari's work, Gabor Mate, we know we can survive trauma. We're built for it. We just can't survive being alone with it all the time. That's when we close our hearts. That's when we cut off from community. That's when we cut off from others. That's when we pass on our shit to our kids. So, briefly, the research started to shift the sector in Australia, and you may be aware that in 2023, we were all very surprised, especially my boss at Monash, that it was legalised, both psilocybin and MDMA, for special use only, and that is for treatment-resistant depression, a term I hate because we are pathologising the person, not the system, and MDMA for PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. However, you need an authorised prescriber, which is a special psychiatrist, and there's only a handful now who've been licensed to achieve that status in Australia. Some of them are setting up clinics. That's wonderful, but at a price tag of $25,000 to $30,000 for a treatment. And that might not even work. Yeah. Now, I'm all for, obviously, this expansion, but it's just not possible to the people who really need it. So again, we're seeing the systemic errors pass on again and again. Hope coming that Medibank, the insurer, private health insurer, have said they'll back it. Yet to see what that will actually look like rolled out and who will qualify. And DVA months ago, maybe it'd be a month ago, DVA said they're going to fund potentially, which will be the research maybe we need, and then we'll start to see it rolled out in a much more accessible way. So briefly, am I over time? I am. Am I okay? No, I'm good. Oh, good. This is the good part. I've got through the stuff you can get from ChatGPT. This is the good part, because this is the preparation phase. This is how we start to work in a way that you guys are all doing with the people, but we start turning someone's unconscious towards maybe where they haven't been before consciously. And that's scary. We have to work in dyads in Australia. We have to work with male and female teams predominantly. Sometimes, just recently, last week, I had a dose with 2 female therapists. The woman was a sexual assault victim. It was perfect for what she needed for her first time on MDMA. I'm working on a PTSD and first responder study, and in time to come, who's to say the PIR workers here wouldn't be classified as first responders? And we might even see this work being done preemptively from all the trauma that we're all exposed to in the human health profession. That I do know of a great paramedic that every 6 months preemptively uses MDMA or psilocybin to protect his mental health. And he's still out there. Because a lot of the PTSD first responders we're seeing, when we do the dose and they have a different relationship with themselves, some of them don't want to go back to work. Can you blame them? No. So we start with building this rapport. It's a big word in psychotherapy, but it means everything. We shouldn't go on to do the dose if that rapport's not there. And again, I think it's something about with these medicines that drop down your defense mechanisms, psychological ones in particular, deliberately. It's just too risky to sit with someone that you don't feel will go with you where you need to go. And this can be hard. I had to say no to someone who waited a year on the clinical trial wait list to have a psilocybin session, but the level of anger management and other resources and social factors that they were in, it felt cruel to expose to him to that material with something like psilocybin. This was a few years ago. Now that person would be ideal for something like MDMA perhaps. But yeah, this is where the research is hopefully going to tell us who's doing well on these early trials, and they're handfuls, like 25 on one-on-one, 10 was on the first. You know, they're really small numbers. Overseas we might see 80 people or so, but it's early days yet. We have to get the people off their current medication. That in itself can be a bit unethical, as you can imagine, if you've been on SSRIs for 2 decades. So there's a washout period, a lot of change and dysfunction and I hate that word, sorry. A lot of distress can come in that period. So we're watching them pretty close. A lot of people have used alcohol, as we know, and that is a contraindication to the research. I'm only going to talk about the research, not the private field yet. But we have taken many people that have, significant alcohol use and been able to lower it to a point. But for the research setting, they need to know what's what at this early stage. So unfortunately, that means some people just end up saying, no, I can't do it. I'm just going to pull out. And that's such a shame when they've waited so long, as you can imagine. In time to come, I think there's just been a study that's looked at psilocybin and SRI's continued use to see if they needed more or less due to the similar receptor binding on serotonin H2-1. So it's starting to look a little bit more flexible, but these early studies have had to be, really randomised control, gold standard, really strict. And that's also been pretty heartbreaking as an attachment-based therapist, because we have to say goodbye to these people after 3 months, and they don't want to go, and we don't want to leave them. It's certainly something that I'm a bit envious of for people like yourself. If you're going to come and do the integration work, you get to have the ongoing relationships. And while it's not the same as not being in the room, I know that day is powerful. I do a lot of integration work in my private practice, and I think they're my favourite over even the dose day, because they can tell me about their dose day. Yes, I wasn't there, but their story means much more. And then we get this unlimited time, unlimited depending on the mental health system that you're in. So that's something to consider. I'd love you all to consider how you're already probably doing integration work, but it's going to, by the sound of it, people are using these substances now. It's getting more mainstream. So, twin set psychiatrists come up to me and tell me what they did on the weekend. It's just like such a change of paradigm, while the fear is still obviously there, and that's a good thing while we're still learning. I think the other difference with AOD use, and I'm hesitant on recreational divide with intentional, because sometimes someone's biggest, most important spiritual experience came from a recreational dose. But what is different is this intention setting. We find that the people that have come in with an intention they want to work on, and we'll help them drill that down in these roughly three 90-minute sessions. The ones that have a really solid intention that they're really curious about, even a little bit fearful of, they seem to find, even if that doesn't come up in the dose day, it's something about preparing their unconscious that they get more out of it. Less of that, what we call experiential avoidance, comes up. And feel free to ask any questions as I go through the next slides, if there's protocol ones. Dose day. This is the big day. Most trials, and also the private access scheme, have maybe 2 or 3 doses in the 3 months roughly. Hopefully in years to come, when it's individualised and rolled out properly, you might only need 1. You might want 1 in 5 years. You might be integrating something huge, and then, it won't be so rigid. So at this stage, we have this 10-hour day roughly. We get there, we set up the equipment. At the moment, we work in dyads, as I said, with individuals, but there is a study coming about group work. I think there's already been one in Melbourne with using group work, which would also be really exciting for the AD sector, for relationships, for community, because sometimes some of these people feel really alone after such a life-changing experience, and maybe came from a background where they can't talk to people around them. We have to do drugs and pregnancy tests just to rule out what are we actually going ahead with. And the exciting, I'd say, fourth So there's, the therapist, there's the client or the participant, and then there's the music. This is the fourth therapist we like to refer to. It makes or breaks a session, and it gives us so much data. Whether someone responds to, the flutes of South America, it's all curated music without lyrics in your own language. And as a result, it provides a pretty powerful, amplifier. And that's the same with the medicine. The medicine is a tool, it's an amplifier. So you're going in for 10 hours to sit with possibly everything you don't want to think about, is how we sometimes have to help the prep stage. With MDMA, we also provide a booster. So it's about 120 milligrams of synthetic, obviously, and it's obviously very good grade, pharmaceutical grade, you'd hope, because some of them are having really big hallucinations on MDMA and having trouble walking down the hallway, and you'd swear they're on psilocybin, and they're not. It's so interesting and different. I think it really helps to show, like we were talking about with chronic pain, how many factors impact someone's consciousness and how varied that can be. With psilocybin, it's a one dose in urine. That lasts a little bit longer, up to 6 to 8 hours. And we're talking about an IV study coming up, which might give us a little bit more range in terms of upping and downing the intensity of the effect, which could be really helpful. If it's too hard, if it's too full on, then the trauma therapist in me is excited at having a little bit more nuance, that we can knock it off a bit through the IV, and then it becomes more like a 20-minute change rather than giving someone a Xanax or a benzo is the rescue medication. And interestingly, around the world, most studies report not needing the rescue medication. And the safety tolerance has been incredible in terms of, I think there's only ever been a handful of people ever phoned in the 24 hours that night, where the participants get our phone numbers, and around the world, it's like they a very small number actually call in panic, and that's good if that's, if that safety's been put in there prior to the dose day. We also invite the support person in to come and get them at the end. There's exciting studies, though, that the support person might be involved in the therapy in the future coming up. So we do a little screen around, are they okay? Are we sending them home to a domestic violence situation? All these sort of factors, but it isn't enough. And again, it puts us as like the saviours rather than them doing the work with the family. So I'm excited to see where that will happen in years to come. This is the other slide. If you're going to remember anything, it's this one, please. Integration is everything. As you guys know, oh, thank you. I'm so bad at two screens, obviously. The picture says 1,000 words. You guys would see it more than ever. People just wanting to, amass more and more, extraordinary experiences, travel anywhere in the world, sit with their guru, and it means nothing. If you were an asshole before, you're going to be an asshole afterwards. And I see it more than ever in this field because psychedelics are sexy. So of course it's attracting narcissism in the clinical set too. Yeah, it's a bit scary. They're already in a lot of power. And, it's really lucrative. I've been called Athena, war goddess. I've been called, they see you in such a different way. And you're sitting there for 6 hours with someone stroking your hand, looking at you in, awe. It takes a lot to make sure that we are discharging that transference. We've got really healthy teams that call each other out when boundaries are crossed. And just, it's got to be really tight teams and excellent supervision. I like to say that integration is everything because it's never ending, it's ongoing, and that bittersweet point of healing when compassion, more forcefully or more gently, integrates our wounds and ways of coping. Also, there's a fantastic Emirates professor, Chris Bash, who took 73 high doses of LSD over 20 years. So he painstakingly documented his high doses following Stan Groff's research. Him and his wife was a therapist. 20 years they documented these huge doses once a year. He doesn't recommend it. It's a book he's written now. But he did say, what a delicate balancing act. A little transcendence is a good thing. It's healing, it's reassuring and illuminating. It can remind us who we are and why we're here. But, you know, too much means you stop investing in why we're here. So this one is just a little prompt to remind me of a beautiful man I worked with. I haven't been involved in a drug or alcohol study as such yet. There's been an MDMA methamphetamine one done in Sydney. With the participants I've seen, there's been a notable reduction in drug and alcohol use. They haven't wanted it. It's just the last thing they wanted. But with one beautiful participant, it was a sex addiction that emerged on the second prep session, and he'd never had MDMA before. So what do you think's going to happen? Yeah. And we prepped for it. I got extra supervision. I discussed it directly with him. I warned him of the side effects, and it was a truly incredible day. But every part of that 12 weeks took a lot of courage and compassion on his behalf, but also ours as a team. And that's when safety comes in. We're always videoed, as I mentioned earlier. We work in teams, but it was a confronting day where I'm aware, and this happens all the time in therapy. If you're doing a good job, they're meant to use you as a way to work on their issues. But this one took another level because with the MDMA, it involved a lot of requests for extra touch. Now, touch is totally accepted in psychedelic therapy, but we consent heavily around it. We contract before what would be acceptable in terms of what's safe touch, just going to the bathroom, needing a bit of assistance, or therapeutic touch, which is where you're going to provide maybe a missing experience, depending on your attachment system or your earlier childhood experiences. And so with this gentleman, what ended up being a PTSD study for me and him became, a sex addiction work. And he was using our services and going to venues up to 6 times a day, as well as holding down a job and a marriage that fell apart. And the guilt and the shame, as you can imagine, was enormous. On that very second session, when he told us about it, he couldn't say a lot of the words, which is something else we noticed before the dose. People can't say the word rape or can't say the word, sex or... And then after the dose, it's so marvellous to see there's this agency that comes in where they want to talk about these things, even if they're hesitating. And so this gentleman did, through holding my hand for hours and practicing different ways of relating. At one point, like in terms of how to touch a woman, he put up his eye shades, because that's the other thing, sorry if I hadn't mentioned. They wear eye shades, well, they're invited to wear eye shades and earmuffs, because that can help them go in and help them feel more with their experience and rather out of their cognitive mind. So the theory says. But we have to watch, when are we actually getting them out of relationship too? You'll just go back in. Sometimes, depending on the wound, they don't want to go in. I've had a rape victim that lying on the couch with eye shades on and headphones was horrible. And does the research think of that? No. So it really took a lot to kind of change the protocols and adapt them. And I divert back to this beautiful man. In that conversation, in that touch, at one point when he pulled up his eye shades, he looked at me and he said, "You want nothing from me, do you?" And what would you answer? If someone's high on MDMA, you've developed all this trust and rapport, you're 4 sessions in. I said, with a smile and gentle eyes, I said, "No, I don't, but I want to be here with you." And that experience looked like, gave him something to recognise for the first time that transactional sexual relationships were not a way he wanted to meet others. He was not needing something from me in order to feel nourished. And from that trajectory on, from that second dose, that first dose, still by the second dose, he was still abstaining from sexual venues and only because he didn't want to. I work with sex workers, I'm a full supporter, but he didn't want to because it was damaging his relationships and himself, most importantly, his relationship with himself. And by the end of the 18 weeks, he certainly had started to find relationships in other ways that were rewarding, in line with his values, and made him feel like he didn't need to have or offer something other than himself. To some, this is what you may be hearing in the mainstream media. This is why you might be hearing people come and say, you know, I've heard about this, and someone famous has done it, I want to try it, and they think it's a magical cure. It's a magical cure if you do the therapy, and the therapy is good quality. And that means the therapists aren't being burnt out, because like you guys, we hear so much suffering. I have a crazy array of things I do to keep my nervous system passing stuff through. End of dose days, I'm regularly in the water or somewhere in nature. I will tell people, like family, don't touch me, I need to go do my thing. You know, I have so much supervision, mainly from international people because we're just so new here. But a lot of women, a lot of underground women overseas are the ones that are leading this work. Well, their work's being taken, it's not being credited, because they have been holding these safe spaces for decades. That's me, thank you, and my beautiful colleagues are.